Welcome back to another edition of Leaders and Learners, where we all know that the best leaders are lifetime learners. Today, my guest is Sarah Jakle. Yale, USC, UCLA. She did not build a policy paper. She built a nonprofit called DemocraShe that sits inside of high schools and builds the next generation of women who will run, win, and lead. Hear me now. Run, win, and lead. From brain science to ballots, we're going to take it all. This woman is doing the work. Sarah believes the problem is not that girls do not want the power. The problem is that no one is teaching them how to handle what comes with it, right? And that builds what? Fear. So how do you overcome that? DemocraShe fixes all of that, starting at age 16. Now, Sarah, welcome to Leaders and Learners. Hi.
Thank you, Tonya.
Super excited to have you here. Most people know the young people are future leaders. That is my life's work. You were in the middle of the 2020 election cycle. Every room you walked into was full of women doing the work, but the candidates roster, they weren't on. Listen, at what moment did you realize the problem was not the voters? It was the pipeline. And what did you do next? Talk to us.
So it was when I was serving as the Get Out the Vote director for the California National Organization for Women. I saw that extraordinary, brilliant, amazing women couldn't see themselves as candidates for office, whereas our male counterparts were saying, I was thinking governor. And the men aren't doing anything wrong. That's amazing confidence. But why weren't women matching it? At the time we were talking about it, took 7 to 9 conversations to get a woman to consider running for office. And it took a man 1. So on the one side, women were coming up against imposter syndrome. And a 2022 KPMG study, as I started to dig further, found that 75% of all women executives track with imposter syndrome. So this was endemic for women on the pipeline side. But we can't just look at the pipeline side. We have to look at what I was seeing when women stepped up and said, yes, I would like to serve my country. And what we saw was horrifying. Back when Facebook was actually tracking these statistics, they found that in 2020, Republican women got twice as much bullying and harassment as Republican men, and Democratic women got 10 times as much bullying and harassment as Democratic men. So if we know this is coming for women, and if we know they can't see themselves as candidates, this is where my background in social work let me know that there are evidence-based practices to help brains step out of comfort zones and regulate in times of adversity. And we can protect women who are stepping up and also help them get to yes. And it was putting together my social work master's and my public policy master's where DemocraShe was born.
I love that. I absolutely love that. I was just telling you, and I want the audience to know, I acknowledge that I am a habitual complainer. Okay. There are a lot of things I'm not happy with, but I will not verbalize my discontent unless I'm ready to dig in and actually do some of the work. And it sounds like you did absolutely the same thing. Saw something that you were not happy about and decided, listen, we're about to fix this. I applaud you.
Thank you. And 100%, right? I think there is a phrase that came out of working on Obama's campaign, which is fired up and ready to go. And I was fired up coming out of the 2020 election on behalf of women, and I was ready to go. And I found in my research in this, as I dug deeper, high school is the last time boys and girls think they can run for office equally. It is the perfect time to intervene and not only keep these radiant young women sprinting ahead on their goals, but also start to teach them nervous system and brain science to protect them when they are stepping into spaces of power, because we know power pushes back. It does every time. So if we know that, we have to prep women with the skills to regulate their nervous system so they own their inner lives in these situations, not the bullies.
You know, DemocraShe, and we're definitely going to get back to the boys and girls thing, but I want to ask you, DemocraShe is receiving 7 times more applications than you can actually serve right now. 7 times. That's what I was told. So talk to me about what is actually happening in those 10 weeks with those girls, because clearly the girls know something. They know something is in that room that they cannot get anywhere else. Talk to me about that.
Girls know two things. They know that they meet their inner best friend, because on our journey, there are so many inner critics in our head. And I know, Tonya, you're familiar with her because we're all familiar with her. Evolutionarily, the inner critic was very helpful. She's not as helpful anymore. So teaching young women to shift that inner critic that says, it's not your time, it's not your turn, no one wants to hear from you, over to what their inner best friend would say to them in that situation, which is, you matter, you are important, your voice has value, and teaching them to access that in every situation. So before a test, before a speech, before they apply to their reach college, before they go for the job, for the promotion, it's shifting that critic to the cheerleader is one of the things that's unique to DemocraShe, along with things like grounding with our Mother Earth. So the first thing that happens if someone is being cruel to you is you start to go into fight, flight, freeze, and you start to get flooded. Our nervous system floods. Mm-hmm. Grounding, noticing yourself in contact with a concrete surface, actually settles that fight, flight, freeze back and pulls you from the lizard brain back to your prefrontal cortex, so you can show up in that situation how you want, not how you're being triggered into it. So it's skills like that that we combine with DemocraShe Congress, where you change your name to Congresswoman and you co-sponsor and pass bills, or calling your representative and realizing sometimes for the first time that they work for us and our voices matter, and we can absolutely let them know how we feel and vote them out if they're not listening to us. And also advocating from their lived experience, that their lived experience is a superpower. No one else is you. In the whole world, you are the expert on your life, and your voice deserves to be heard in our policies. So girls learn to advocate for themselves and for others who don't share their lived experiences, because we stand up for everyone.
I think that's a great way to teach them also that perspective matters, and your lived experience builds your perspective. And that's awesome, because for the girls that they're supporting, they're almost forced to recognize their inner empathy and ability to support someone else's perspective, even if they haven't gone through it, because now they're building bonds with other girls that are going through the same thing they're going through. Yeah.
Not only are they building bonds in sisterhood, we call each other sisters, an unconditionally supportive sisterhood where women lift women. And girls thrive in that. They love those spaces where they get to lift each other and celebrate each other and be proud of each other. I also think it's unique because as an online program, we are putting 42 different states in the room. So when you're talking about empathizing with different perspectives, the other thing I was seeing in 2020 is our states are being siloed off into almost different countries. And if we are to move forward as a democracy and a republic, we have to build together. And so in our program, Massachusetts is talking to Mississippi, and Texas is talking to Oklahoma, and New York and California are talking to Missouri and Arkansas. And you're building a different cross-cultural exchange of different lived experiences across this country, and that we fight for all women who are going through such different things. And girls come out of their bubble in high school to learn what's happening around our country.
Yeah, I love that. You pay girls to participate, right? So where in a field where, volunteer service is basically the gatekeeping mechanism for who gets access to power, DemocraShe is offering stipends. That's a radical act, and I applaud it. Who decided that and why? Because not enough people are actually talking about that piece. That's pretty dope.
Thank you. When I was working in politics in 2018 and 2020, I was seeing that the majority of early political pipeline opportunities, to your point, are unpaid internships, largely because campaigns can't afford to pay their interns. What that means, though, is that only people who can afford unpaid internships get access to these critical early opportunities. And coming out of this work, I really dream of an America that truly reflects all of her people. And when we're thinking about that, we have to think about barriers to entry. One of the main barriers to entry is for young women who, because of their income level and background, have to work and they can't afford unpaid internships. And we desperately need their voices in our democracy. I will tell you, Tonya, people thought I had lost my mind when I said, as a startup nonprofit, we are going to pay our students. And it's one of the things I am most passionate about. Not only do young women learn that their time has value, which is a really important thing for a high school girl to learn, but it means we can serve 70% first generation Americans, young women who are often most passionate about our country and most working jobs, 2-3 jobs with the family. And I am so excited that those girls have access to understanding that our democracy needs them. Their voices are brilliant and beautiful and important to have in our country, and it wouldn't be possible without the stipend.
How are you teaching young girls to regulate their fear under pressure?
Yeah. So the first thing is to name it and normalize it. In DemocraShe, we are online. So something we say a lot is before we make our campaign speeches, so girls practice running for office and they make campaign speeches, we say, if there are any nerves in the room, can you put a heart on your screen? And the whole screen fills up with hearts. And we say, right? It's so normal. Everybody gets nervous. And we have tools. We ground with our Mother Earth, which settles the nervous system, and we check in with what our inner best friend would say about our right to use our voice. And then we make the speech. And so naming, normalizing, and then shifting the narrative, shifting the inner critic to an encouraging voice that encourages you to step up and take up space and make your voice heard. And we also practice. We do grounding where we take people through imagining a situation where somebody is dysregulating at them. So yelling at them, being aggressive toward them, and practicing regulating their nervous system, making that contact again with the ground so that they access their authentic choice. Do they need to get out of this situation? Do they need to step up in this situation? Normally in fight, flight, freeze, we get triggered into a response that may not serve what we actually want. And what we want is for what Viktor Frankl said, to make a space between stimulus and response. And in that space is choice, and in that choice is freedom. We want every woman to have access to her authentic choice about what to do when the stimulus is provoking a response versus what the nervous system triggers into fight, flight, freeze. Those leaders are making decisions based on what they want, not on what their lizard brain is afraid of.
I love that. We train executives to regulate fear under pressure. Why not young girls? I think it's brilliant. Absolutely brilliant.
The dream is they get skills that adult women get, but in high school, right? And often the skills that you're talking about are fancy executive coaches versus democratizing these skills, making
Mm,
sure every young woman has access to them and not just the amazing elite executives.
yeah, that amazing. I really want to know how you came up with the concept and the elements of the program, because you could have just said, we're training young girls in high school to do this thing later on in life when they're ready. But you have so many other elements. Even when you talk about grounding, it makes me think about my yoga training. I was a yoga instructor, and you speak a lot of that language when you're talking about the grounding and becoming one with the earth. And all of those are elements of something else that people don't usually affiliate with politics. So, talk to me about that.
So, not only do I have two different masters, I have a master in social work, and it was a military social work degree because I wanted to study PTSD in the brain. And I also had a master in public policy because I was working with the homeless community dealing with mental illness. It made me real mad, and I wanted to look at systemic change. I think, however, the pieces really came together. In 2014, I was diagnosed with a brutal autoimmune disease called psoriatic arthritis. And Tonya, I was told I would never work again. And I stayed on the couch for 2 years, but I am stubborn and I am academic. So I took all the training that I had and really investigated the brain and how to communicate with the part of the brain that goes into fight, flight, freeze, which is yoga, which is somatic work, because I knew that's what I was going through. And then when the election of 2016 happened, I took all the skills that I'd been developing for myself, like inner best friend, like grounding with Mother Earth, like savoring the good, to just make a start. I've been told I would never work again. I just got in the car and then I got out and then I drove there and then I registered one voter and I used my skills each time. What would my inner best friend say, who is Barack Obama, about getting in the car and just trying? And I ended up doing that so many times so successfully that I became a national outreach director for voter registration and the Get Out the Vote director for the California National Organization for Women. So when I was seeing what women were going through, both in doubting themselves and then in the pushback they received, I uniquely had a life story that had brought me to the point of teaching myself and developing these skills that I could now give high school girls to deal with adversity, to step out of their comfort zone, to deal with very distressing incoming stimuli, because I had lived most of it. And so it turned into, you make sense of suffering. I made sense of suffering with DemocraShe.
That was It was a little heavy for me because I am a gun violence survivor, and I have always wanted to be the voice of young people that have been through trauma. It really is rewarding to me that you have taken the things that made you so unhappy and infuriated and turned it into something so positive and impactful. You have a tapestry in your office that you display, and it's in your office, and it's like inside out on purpose, something like that, right? And I want you to talk me through this because as talk me through this display that you have, because as a reminder that the knots are a point, something specific, and then how you get the girls to understand that.
So there's a story with this tapestry. So my grandmother was not allowed to go to college. and married off very young to a man who did not treat her well. And she, which was unheard of in the 40s, divorced him and traveled Nepal and Bhutan and Poland and collected the indigenous art of women, which was tapestries, that she then turned into an art museum in her home. And I got the tapestry behind me for my 40th birthday to date myself. And as my husband says, it's the only thing of value that we own, and no one would know to take it. I usually display it backwards with the knots showing because I want the girls to know that in this age of social media, where everything looks so fantastic and everyone's having the best life, truly behind that is so much work. And the knots are the work. And sometimes we need to be reminded that behind beauty is a tremendous amount of difficulty and strain and work, so that we can celebrate that and not just the perfect image on your screen. That work has value and meaning and is not shameful, although we think we're the only ones. We think everyone else has just got it together. And so my tapestry reminds me of a woman's journey a long time ago to empowerment, and that there's so much work that goes into these seemingly perfect images that we show each other in real life.
It feels like perfectionism is being weaponized against girls. And how you are building a program to deprogram that in 10 weeks is absolutely incredible. Thank you for the work. We are in a moment. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, we actually track the phrase in our pre-post tests. I'm mad at myself when I'm not perfect, because it's something we are fighting. And so before DemocraShe, 70% of girls identify with the phrase, I'm mad at myself when I'm not perfect. And after DemocraShe, that is 11%.
Wow. It's hard. It's hard because, even trying to be a good parent, you're still fighting against what else, other elements that your child is bringing into their life. But then there are also parents that cause some of these issues. So dealing with that and being able to deprogram that is a really big deal. Listen, we are in a moment where civic engagement is being met with hostility, legislation, and straight up intimidation tactics. It is so wild to me, this moment that we're in. You're training high school girls and adults to use trauma resiliency skills to stay functional under authoritarianism, a word that I don't even think we were using on a regular basis. Now this is an everyday thing. We're dealing with authoritarianism. This is not a tagline. This is more of a survival skill at this point. What is DemocraShe teaching right now that was not in the original curriculum?
I don't think, the only thing that I would say that's different than the original curriculum, because I do think under any circumstance, women knowing that they are seen, heard, and valued, with practical brain hacks to achieve that, and then tying that to civic engagement skills, it's been from the beginning. I think the only difference is now when they go through the history of feminism, the history of women's rights, the history of the women's movement, where we are today, and the kind of messages that they're seeing out there as high school girls are very different, even from when we started in 2021.
Yeah, the messages are absolutely different. High school, well, you talked about this earlier, but I want to go back to it. High school is the last moment when boys and girls believe they can run for office equally. That is what the research actually says. So, talk to me about what happens after that moment. What specifically kills confidence, and why does it disappropriately silence girls, particularly girls of color?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I will say, I don't know that there's a consensus on that. They can absolutely track with statistics the last time boys and girls think they can run for office equally. And then I think it's so many factors, right? One is that boys are encouraged to continue pursuing political policy. They are encouraged in leadership. They are encouraged in all those things. Another is the socialization of perfectionism continues for women and just gets worse. I do think it's a great question that we don't know the answer of exactly why. We certainly know it happens, and we know we need to arrest it. And perfectionism, imposter syndrome, and sisterhood, and getting encouraged in your ambitions are all pieces of that puzzle that we bake into DemocraShe.
Again, the work is priceless. It takes 7 to 9 conversations before the average woman commits to running for office. Even if it's something she wanted to do, there still have to be people around her convincing her to do it and that she can do it. One conversation for an average man. You tell them they can, okay, I'm gonna go. Just very not dealing, obviously, with psychologically the things women are dealing with. That gap is a reputation problem. Women are pre-managing the court of public opinion before they even announce. What does DemocraShe teach girls about owning their story before someone else writes it for them?
I do think understanding that your identity is your superpower. It is the thing that makes you most qualified to speak. And your lived experience and your story is what gives you strength in these rooms because it is uniquely yours. There's even more up-to-date statistics now about running for office that men will self-select in because they think this is their right. White women have to be recruited, and women of color are actively discouraged, is kind of the most recent up-to-date research. So I think being able to teach women to internalize this strength, this voice of an inner best friend, this voice of an inner champion, these various ways that you're not looking outside you for someone to tell you and give you permission. You're locating the permission inside of you, and it goes with you wherever you go. It's not the teacher in high school that has your back and then you lose her when you go off to college, or your mom who then you're far away from. It is something you carry with you wherever you go. That permission is inside her. And I think the more women are taught to look for outside validation, the more they shrink and the more they lose their story and the more they lose their voice. So we locate it inside every girl.
I've gone so far as to, especially when I'm talking to young athletes, I told you I work with young athletes, but I tell them one of my best teachers was Eminem. I don't know if you're a hip hop artist, but I love Eminem because he was one of the first people that said, I'm going to come out and I'm going to tell you all about me, the good, the bad, and the ugly. So when I start doing my work, you have nothing to beat me over the head with because I've come to understand my own issues, my own story. And if I'm good with it, I'm going to help other people be good with it too, based on the work that I'm delivering. And I think you've even said running for office is a birthright.
Yes.
I would love for you to say that directly to a girl right now who is listening to this podcast or whose mom might let them take a look at it and thinks politics is not for people like her. What do you say?
I say someday America will truly reflect all of its people. And imagine what it will look like when all of the radiant spectrum of lived experiences are reflected in our laws. You are a critical part of that. We need your voice. And women deserve to be in every single room where decisions are being made, and to know that running for office is their absolute birthright. It is not something you need permission for. It is not something you need to be tapped for. It is your birthright to stand up there and represent your constituents with your lived experience and your voice. And I hope you apply to DemocraShe so you meet your sisters who will have your back on this journey, because it's hard to go it alone. You need a community. We would love to be your community. And trust me, women can and do lift women, and will have your back all the way to the White House.
I love that. Before we get out of here, I definitely wanted the people to be able to see the website and understand what to do next. If this conversation sparks something in you and you want to share it with a young girl, tell them where to go and how to make that happen.
Yeah, so there are a couple options. So if you go to apply at the top of the screen, you will see options for our flagship program, our summer program. If you scroll down, there's the flagship program, the summer intensives, and the online training course. So right now, the summer intensives are open. You are paid a stipend. It is a one-day best of DemocraShe peer-led adventure. And if you are a busy high school girl, we totally understand. We've got a completely free self-directed online training course with amazing videos of high school girls who look just like you, leading you through fun, easy curriculum where you will meet your inner best friend, you will call a representative, and on the other side, you can join a discussion group with girls like you across the country.
What else is a great interest for young people that are interested in, or they're not sure they're interested in, or other things you have going on, like neuroscience and women? I love that, by the way.
Yeah, so please feel free to play around on our website to learn about neuroscience in women, neuroscience and democracy, our resiliency framework. For any adults listening, we have the mentorship option where you can mentor a girl in the 10-week program for only half an hour a week. You meet a remarkable young woman and get to be part of her journey. That is the link right there. And then Tonya, I would be a remiss executive director if I didn't mention, if this resonates with you, it is the small monthly donors that make the backbone of our work. We do pay stipends to these girls, and we believe in that model. You can help fund that. Every girl is $300. She gets a $300 stipend. So on the far right is the donate button. And if this resonates with you, we would be grateful for $5 a month, $10 a month. If you're able to make a bigger donation, if you'd like to learn more, email us at info@democrashe.org. And we so appreciate even the consideration.
Absolutely. Listen, the work is important. Um, the fact that you have started a program that allows for us to build a leadership pipeline is a big deal. These issues that these young people are learning to navigate and alleviate will make them incredible leaders no matter what industry they go into moving forward. So, again, I wanted to thank you. Let the people know if there is any other way that they can stay connected to you. Are you on Instagram or LinkedIn, or where you at? And how can they, you know, contact you if need be?
Absolutely. So I am on LinkedIn, Sarah Jakle, Jakle, and you can easily message me there. I am also on Facebook. And then I would say, just knowing democracy.org, if you make it to our website, you can find everything there.
Awesome. Well, Sarah, I definitely want to thank you. Continue to share information with us, and we'll share it with our viewers and our followers. This is an important conversation, and let's keep it going.
Thank you so much for having me. It's truly a joy.
Absolutely. Thank you. Listen, y'all, Sarah, she's a powerhouse. She's not waiting for the political climate to improve. She's building the people who will improve it. And that's what we need. I myself am a commissioner. You guys know this. I sit in rooms where policy gets made, discussed, voted down, all of those good things. And I will tell you directly, the rooms are not full enough. Not enough women are in these rooms, not enough women of color, not enough women who grew up without access and still fought their way in. There's just not enough. DemocraShe is not a program, it's a pipeline. I continue to say that it's a pipeline. And if you are not funding it, following it, or forwarding this episode to someone right now with a daughter, you are part of the problem. You're part of the gap. I want you to help, these young girls control the narrative in their own life before the narrative controls them. And you too, because there's not enough people helping to make policy that will impact you in the most positive way. This has been another episode of Leaders and Learners. Thank you guys for being here. Make sure you subscribe and you share this with someone who needs it. All right, until next time. Hey, thanks for showing up to the podcast where we all know that the best leaders are lifetime learners. When you get a sec, take a moment, leave a comment. What you think about today's episode, and share it with someone that you know could use the gems that were dropped today. Follow and subscribe. You don't want to miss who's coming up next. You never know who could show up here and what they could say. For your professional needs, marketing, PR, communications, and leadership, make sure you follow us on all social media platforms at Sand and Shores, or hit us up at sandandshores.com. Again, thanks so much for showing up. We appreciate you, and we'll see you soon.